Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Rick Anthony. I'm with the Amazon Inspector team. I'm here with Kashish Wadhwa and Alistair McLaurin, and we're really pleased to talk to you about Amazon and Inspector and how you can use some of the new features we've just recently launched in order to enhance workload security. So today we're going to tell you a little bit about Amazon Inspector, just some of the highlights about why you would want to use it, how does it work. We're going to dive into the new features. Alistair is going to talk about HSBC and how they utilize Inspector. And then we'll do some demos and take your questions. So really quickly, what is Amazon Inspector? So Amazon Inspector is an automated vulnerability management service, and it continually scans your workloads for software vulnerabilities and network exposure. And so just really quickly, I wanted to kind of go and dive into a little bit of history. So if you Google Amazon Inspector, you'll see that there are two services called Inspector. We launched Amazon Inspector, the one we're talking about today, 2 years ago, actually right here at reInvent. But there's also a service called Amazon Inspector Classic, which is an older service we're not going to talk about. We're focusing strictly on the newer Inspector. And when we launched 2 years ago, we natively supported two Amazon resources, EC2 instances and container images that were in ECR. Last year, we changed that so that we also supported Lambda functions, and we supported both looking at your dependencies, and then at Reinforce this year, we added another capability where the code that you write, we also, through a collaboration with Code Guru, will dive in and look at your code to see if there's any security violations. And we'll talk about some of that as we go through the presentation today. And at this reInvent, we also launched one new thing, which is something new down there at the bottom. Yesterday, we announced support for taking Inspector and putting it into your CI/CD pipelines so that you can assess and scan your container images directly from that point of view. Okay, so quickly, why would you want to use Inspector? So it's a vulnerability management system, so most of our customers are using Inspector in order to find vulnerabilities within their workloads. And our focus is really to try to make that process as easy and seamless as possible. And we know that vulnerability management services create lots of findings. And so part of what we do with Inspector is to make it easier for you to figure out what's the most important thing that I need to patch or remediate in my system. We also help you support and meet any compliance requirements that you may have as a business. And then we also launched a brand new feature back at Reinforce where we now generate SBOMs. And so you can just kind of really quickly, like, what is an SBOM? An SBOM is simply a software bill of material. So all of the resources that I just talked about on the last slide, as we discover those resources and as we assess them, we collect the inventory of software and we make that available back to you. So as a user, you can export that data to S3 and do whatever you want with it. You can visualize it in dashboards, you can run Athena queries. You know, as an example, let's say you're a security practitioner and you find out that there's a questionable Python package. You know, you may get the question, does my organization run that Python package? And so using our SBOM feature, you can very quickly run a query and say, yes, we have it, and it's running on these EC2 instances, and now you know exactly what you need to target for remediation. So we're going to go kind of briefly through how Inspector works. Essentially, there's about 3 stages of operation. Number one, you turn Inspector on, and we make that pretty easy. We'll dive into that. Inspector then goes through a sequence of just discovering all your resources and scanning them. And if you noticed a couple slides ago, we highlighted the fact that Inspector is a continual scanning service. And when we dive into that, you'll learn why, because this is something that Inspector just does on its own over and over. Every time you launch a resource, it discovers it automatically. We've tailored Inspector to be as hands-off and as administration-free as possible. Once Inspector finds your resources and scans it, it then generates findings, which we contextualize for your environment. We'll talk about what that means, but that's how we try to tell you what's the most important thing to focus on. And then we allow you to take action, and there's different ways that you can connect Inspector to other systems in order to take action. All right, so let's dive in. So the first stage when you go to use Inspectors, you got to turn it on. And what we've done is we've integrated with AWS organizations. And the power of doing that is it allows you to turn on Inspector and configure it and cross your entire organization in one place as simply as possible. We have customers that have Inspector enabled and configured over thousands of counts, and they've done it simply and they've done it once. And with Inspector and that organization's integration, you can also tell Inspector, not only configure these accounts, but all new accounts that get added to my organization, apply the configuration and turn on Inspector. And that way you're eliminating gaps in your visibility. And that special account, which is the delegated administrator, the one that's able to do all the work, also now sees all of the data. So you've one place to go to look at the vulnerabilities and the data across your entire organization. Step number 2, you've turned on Inspector, and now Inspector goes through this phase of discovering resources and scanning. And this is done automatically. And as you launch EC2 instances, Inspector sees them. As you write Lambda functions, Inspector sees them. As you push container images into ECR, Inspector sees them. Once it detects the resource, it scans it, and it gives you findings in real time. The whole idea is that with Inspector, once you set it up, it's hands-off, and we want your focus as a security professional to be remediation, not tool management. And we manage those findings for you. So as an example, if you launch an EC2 instance and it has 10 critical vulnerabilities and you patch it, Inspector will detect that you've patched your instance. It will close those findings, and it'll do that automatically without any work on your part. And so we've tried to transition the world of traditional scanning tools where you have to say when you want to scan, and maybe you do it Sunday evening, or maybe you do it every Monday or monthly. All of that is gone. Inspector decides when to scan, why to scan, and continually just provides you the data. At Reinforce, we presented with a customer, and you can go and look at the video, who provided, I think, a very powerful story around how this helps you as a customer. So this customer, they are security practitioners, and the question came in regarding a brand new Windows CVE that was a critical. And the question from leadership was, are we impacted? And so in order to answer that question, they didn't have to do any scanning. Inspector had already scanned their entire fleet because it's constantly watching. And within 16 minutes of receiving that email, are we impacted, they were able to respond with a list that says, yes, we are impacted. Here are all the counts, and here are all the instances within 16 minutes. Within 76 minutes, they had taken the data exported from Inspector and crafted out emails to all of the affected owners, asking them to go and remediate. I think it really highlights, the ability to do your job and remediate versus administer a tool. Once we have those findings, we contextualize them. What does that mean? Well, we try to make the findings most relevant for your environment, and we pull in different sources of information in order to do that. So we look at your network exposure for EC2 instances. We look at the CVE, and we try to look at the exploitability scores, and we take all this data and we rescore your vulnerability into something we call an inspector score in order to highlight the most important things to fix first so that you can make the most impact as possible. And then finally, taking action. And you can see as a customer, you can use Inspector's console, you can use our APIs and operate your remediation directly out of there. We send data to security hubs so you can combine it with all of your other data that you may be getting from some of our other services like guard duty or detective. We also send all of the data out via EventBridge. So as findings are generated, they're published to EventBridge. You can write lambdas, you can write actions, you can have other partners pull that data off. If you're an ECR customer, you also see the findings directly in ECR. So if you're a security practitioner and you want to not expose Inspector to the developers and they're using ECR, you can point them to ECR. They can go and see the findings directly there because that's the tool that they use day in, day out in order to manage their container images. And finally, we have a lot of partners who take our data directly and will allow you to do work through them. All right, so that's really a kind of a really 10-minute summary of what is an inspector and why would you want to use it. I'm going to hand this off to Kashish, and he's going to take you through all of our new offerings.
Thanks, Rick. So like Rick mentioned, we have launched a lot of stuff since last reInvent, and I'll just quickly go through what we have launched in the last 6 to 12 months and then cover what we are launching now. So one of the things that we launched early this year was deep inspection of EC2 instances, where we only, up until last year, we only looked at OS packages or operating system packages. With deep inspection, we also now scan your programming language packages like Java or Python, etc. One of the things that we do there is that we not only look at default paths, but we also look at, like we provide you an option to customize some paths that you can add. So if you install some packages in, let's say, user, OPT, or whatever, you can customize those paths so that we look at both the default paths and the paths that you customize for your organization. We did integrate with EC2 Image Builder. So if you use EC2 Image Builder, you can scan your armies while they're built using Inspector. We also exposed our vulnerability database. So we ingest data from over 50 sources, including both open source and paid vendors that we consume data from, and our own internal research. So now you can search by CVE ID what we have in our database. Rick already covered about SBOM export, so I won't go through that. Code scanning of Lambda functions is again something we launched at Reinforce this year. Amazon Detective, which is one of our sister services, they now consume data from Inspector also and uses it in security groups. And then finally, in July, we launched Enhanced Vulnerability Intelligence. So this was pretty critical because with this, we also give you a lot of data like which malware kits are being used actively to exploit a specific CVE. How does it map to MITRE TNT framework, like which tactic and technique is being used? And a lot of the chatter that you see on social media or others where we highlight the critical indicators of how this is being exploited. So it really helps the analysts or your security response teams to see how to fix and a lot of the details to quickly remediate. So let's talk about what new. In the last 1 week, we have launched 3 main features. The first one is shifting security to the left. So now you can proactively scan your container images in CI/CD. And I'll cover all of these in detail, so I'll just quickly go through what we have launched and then deep dive into each one of those new capabilities. The second one is we have now launched agentless scanning of EC2 instances, which complements our existing SSM-based, which is Systems Manager Agent-based scanning. The third one is now we also provide GenAI and automated reasoning assisted code remediations for all our Lambda code scanning findings. So let's talk about the container image scanning within CI/CD first. Now you can, like we talked about, now you can proactively assess your container images even before you push it to any registry. And the way we have built it, it's a very modular system. We have, to start with, we have built native plugins for Jenkins and TeamCity, but we will announce new plugins as we, in the near future. But the good part is the way we have built this solution is very modular. And if you want, you can build your own solution on top of the components that we provide. So there are essentially 3 components. The first one is our container extraction engine, which takes container image as an input and generates SBOM as an output in Cyclone DX format. Now, from there, the Cyclone DX format, you can point it to our API, which we call Inspector Scan SBOM API, which takes that Cyclone DX as an input and generates results or findings. Now, the third part is the plugin. So this is what we have built natively for Jenkins and TeamCity, which kind of does all the orchestration, taking the container image, pointing it to the engine, then taking the result, pointing it towards the API, getting the results from API, presenting in HTML format, and it also helps with, if you want to block your builds and things like that. And I will show that in the demo how you can do that. It's effectively, three-step process. It's very simple. And then some of the key callouts that I want to make here is that your CI/CD solution doesn't need to be on AWS. It could be on your on-prem. It could be on other cloud providers. And you don't need to enable Inspector for this. You don't need to enable Inspector service for this. You will get your results back in your solution, whatever solution you're using, like Jenkins or whatever you're using. So as long as you have an active AWS account, that's all you need for authentication. That's it. You don't even need to come to AWS console if you don't want to. So your developers can embed security right in their tools that they use day in and day out. With this launch, we also support scratch images, distroless images, and chain guard images. Chain guard images are becoming more popular. So we have closely worked with the team to actually support chain guard images also. Like I mentioned, native plugins for more CI/CD solutions in the upcoming months. You will see more and more coming. So this is kind of the high level how you can add a step in your build pipeline to add Inspector Scan, and then you can see the results right there in Jenkins. And you can, like in the second screenshot, you can download the SBOM, you can download the findings in CSV format, and during the demo, I will show you how easy it is. So if you want to build your own orchestration, like I described, the 3 modules, if you want to take our SBOM generator or extraction engine, you can just download that directly from S3, build your own orchestration, and you and all our partners can build their container scanning solution on top of our components. It's that easy. That's why we wanted to make it very modular so that no one is restricted to use the plugins that we have used. You can change it for your own use case. The second launch we announced earlier this week was agentless scanning of EC2 instance. Right now, it is in paid public preview. And we have taken a different approach here than traditional vendors who support agentless scanning today. What we believe is up until last week, we only supported agent-based scanning, which was by leveraging Systems Manager agent. And now we have introduced what we call hybrid scan mode. So your delegated administrator can now set the scan mode for your whole org. With one click, what happens is we will still continue to rely on SSM agents where they are configured and installed. Now, let's say for some reason, your application teams are behind in deploying agents, or for some reason, your agent wasn't configured. Basically, your agent is not working. So seamlessly, without any manual action, we will automatically fall back on agentless solution. So let's say today you created a new account, you launched 100 instances, and you had SSM agent installed and configured on 80 instances. For those 80% of the instances, we will continue to use SSM-based solution. But for the remaining 20, we will automatically fall back on agentless. And let's say in a week from now or 2 weeks from now, you increase that SSM coverage to 85%. Without any manual action, we will start using the SSM-based solution. And for those additional 5%, and only 15% will rely on agentless. And this transition happens automatically. You don't need to do anything. So in case your agent goes out of coverage or whatever, for some ever reason it stops working, we will rely on agentless solution. The benefit of this is that you, at any given time, you get maximum coverage of your EC2 fleet when it comes to vulnerability assessments. And this was one of our feedback from a lot of our vendors, and Alistair will talk about it also, where a lot of our customers have that 75 to 80 or 85% coverage. It's that last 10 to 15%, it gets really hard. Sometimes it's because the applications are legacy applications, or sometimes it's, they're low latency applications that you just don't want to install an agent. So for such cases, we automatically rely on agentless. For agentless solution, we take a snapshot of your EBS volume, and unlike traditional methods, we don't copy your snapshot in our own account to assess it. We use EBS Direct APIs and NVD Mount utility to copy only the data blocks that have those software packages installed. So that turns out to be less than 15% of the data we transfer, and it's only the application inventory. So this is how, and I'll show it in the demo also, from the delegated admin accounts, it's literally one click that you click on hybrid mode, and that's it. And the best part is we do give you which instance at the instance level. Let's say you configured for hybrid mode, we will tell you which instance is being scanned using SSM-based solution versus agentless solution. So anytime, at any given time, and during the demo, I will also show you how we have the coverage details at any given time as a part of discovery, like Rick mentioned. We tell you how many instances are being managed by Inspector. And with this launch, we hope it's very close to 100% at any given time. The last launch, which we also announced earlier this week, was enhancements to our Lambda code scanning. So we launched this feature at Reinforce this year, where for your custom code that you write in your Lambda code, we identify code vulnerabilities like injection flaws, or if you have hard-coded credentials, or if you're using weak cryptographic issues. So with that launch, we provided code snippet of which line of code had that issue. And we provided a generic recommendation on what do you need to do to fix that vulnerability. With this launch, without any manual action, you don't need to do anything. This is automatically opted in. Now, we also provide you Gen AI-assisted code patches. So as you can see on the screen, on row 9, you can see what to remove and what you can just copy-paste. Your developers can literally copy-paste this code into your code, in your source code repository, and it will fix your vulnerabilities. And all of that, like Rick mentioned earlier, we discover as soon as you fix something and redeploy the function, we automatically detect that you have patched this code, and we will close the finding without any manual action. So now I'll invite Alistair to talk about the use case at HSBC.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So, quick introduction to HSBC. We are a global financial services company. We serve around 39 million people worldwide in 62 countries. And to support this, we have thousands of IT applications, increasingly delivered from public clouds, such as Amazon. So what does our AWS environment look like to support the hundreds of applications? We have 1,800 AWS accounts, supporting over 700 production applications, and we support at least 7 different operating system builds. So interestingly enough, we support Linux, we support different types of Windows, and we've just launched internally our production Mac build. And we support them across 9 different AWS regions. So what we often talk about internally is demonstrable compliance. So financial services, like many other industries, are highly regulated. And for a global institution like HSBC, we have to report to regulators all around the world. So when we move applications to the cloud, we don't just have to attest that we meet our own security standards. we actually have to prove that we are constantly monitoring our adherence with those standards. So when regulators talk to us, they will say, not only what is your control framework, but now go off and prove that you are meeting that control framework and that you are meeting it consistently. And so the core function of the platform that my team builds is collecting millions of data points from all the services on all these hosted applications, and then feeding them into reporting services that then map to our controls that we can show to auditors, that we can show to regulators. So how do we think about security? Well, there's a million different lenses you can look at for security, but we think a lot about the security of the cloud. So how do we secure the cloud identity and access management layer, the underlying control plane? And then we think about the security of the application in the cloud. And this is where we look at our defense in depth, from our internet perimeter to our multi-layered networking, to our gateways back to HSBC on-premises. And then the next layer up, we're thinking about the security in the application. So what's running inside our operating systems, what's running in our containers, what's running in our serverless functions. So the way we do this across these 1,800 accounts is that no AWS account has any standing connection with any other AWS accounts. They are all separate islands. And this is fantastic from a security point of view. It means that any attack on any environment cannot laterally traverse anywhere else. It can't hop from development to pre-production to production. It can't hop sideways from one production application to another. But the disadvantage of this approach means that everything we deploy must be deployed as a standalone service in every single account that consumes it. So this applies to things like sidecar proxies, to gateways, but also any security scanning service. So I'm going to show you our previous server-based scanning solution. So we have a virtual private cloud. We have an individual Amazon account like this. We have an application subnet. Instances are stood up in that application subnet. And we then deploy a scanner instance that sits there scanning those application instances. Now, we could, in theory, have put those scanner instances in a centralized account and opened up connections to every other account, but that would have completely broken our security model. So this all looks good until you start thinking about it at scale. So we have, as I said, hundreds of accounts. So here's a selection of our individual application accounts, but remember, each of them has a development, a pre-production, and a production account. So at this stage, you're looking at over 2,000 instances just running scanner software. It's not a great use of resources. So how do we use Inspector? So in our application subnet, we have the System Center agent. That runs monitoring the services. It goes out to Systems Manager. That builds the inventory. And then Amazon Inspector maps that to things like our CVE scoring. And then we build a global reporting architecture. So remember that we run in 9 different regions, but we want a consolidated view of what this is looking like at any point in time, anywhere in the world. So we take the System Manager inventory data, we push it across EventBridge to DynamoDB. And we use DynamoDB to enrich the data. So we add in, at this point, the business criticality of our services. We add in human readable names for our applications and so on. And then we feed that all into a centralized S3 reporting bucket. We then use Athena to build our own QuickSight dashboards. And this is a fairly standard pattern. It's a very simplified version of our actual architecture, by the way, but it's a fairly standard pattern. We use QuickSight dashboards a lot to create reporting for all the controls that we report on. I'm just going to show you one more thing, which earlier you mentioned the classic version of Inspector. So when we build operating system images, We take a base AMI, normally the Amazon base AMI, we update packages, we install the agents and tools, we security harden the image. And we used to use Inspector Classic to do CVE reporting as part of our build services. We've now moved across to running Inspector 2 on here, and actually one of the tests that we run as part of certifying an operating system as known good is that Inspector works perfectly and is detecting everything on the operating system, and then we publish the image. So if we look at our QuickSight results, I've taken a few very simple screenshots from QuickSight. They're actually quite a lot more sophisticated than this. But our dashboard allows us to search and present CVE data across any field. So we can look at the severity of the CVE, we can look at individual account IDs, we can look at regions, we can choose particular platforms, we can choose a particular AMI, and so on. So this is real data. I cut out production live, so the production data isn't in here, but this is all real data cut and pasted from a real QuickSight dashboard. And you can see the total number of EC2 instances in the sample, the total number of CVEs, the total number of AMIs. And there will always be CVEs. What we worry about are critical CVEs, and what we worry particularly about are critical CVEs in production live. So you can see we can create all these dashboards. We can drill down very, very quickly globally. So again, a critical CVE is announced. We could say right away, what operating system is it running in? Which region is it running in? But because we've augmented the data, we can also say how many business critical applications is that running on? How many business critical applications facing the internet might it be running on? And we could get that data in minutes. We could be feeding that through to update our WAF rules. For example, if there is a vulnerability without remediation, maybe we protect by WAF, maybe we turn on enhanced monitoring. We have runbooks for all of this. So this gives us the very, very near real-time insights that allow us to make these security decisions. The other things that we can do is we can take the data and we can export it. So we can export it for further processing. We can push it to other systems of record. We also keep the data historically. So again, back to that regulatory compliance piece, we can say what our risk exposure was in terms of vulnerabilities at any point in time. The next thing on the roadmap for us is Lambda function scanning. We have tens of thousands of Lambdas. So our coverage as of today is about 20% of Lambdas are scanned. By about the end of January, I think that will be a lot closer to 100%. So what's our personal roadmap for working with Inspector in 2024? We want to get the Lambda coverage to 100%. We want to expand the coverage to include software libraries. So at the moment, we're doing CVEs, but we want to do software libraries. We want to add container scanning. So we have a lot of container scanning solutions at the moment, but we don't always think that they are the most optimum solution today. And then we want to evaluate the new snapshot scanning. So as it is, our Inspector coverage is at about 97.5% of instances today. But obviously, regulators like you to be at near enough 100%. So we want to go out after those edge cases, those images where we can't get the agents installed, those images which are particularly complex to route to, and take that coverage to 100%. So conclusion, we're almost at 100% CVE coverage. We can do it with a simple agent-based approach rather than having to have a centralized scanner or multiple distributed scanners. And at any point in time, we're confident in being able to report on our real-time risk exposure. I'd just like to take a moment to thank the Inspector team for the fantastic partnership we have. It's been really, really nice working with them. And also thank my own team. It's a privilege to come here and present the PowerPoint, but I have a team of architects and engineers who build this stuff. And again, it's a privilege working with them and the Inspector team to make this happen and keep our customers' data safe. Thank you.
So now let's look at the demo really quickly of all the three features. So let's look at the CI/CD integration first. I'm going to show how you can easily integrate with Jenkins and what all you can do. So if you go to Manage Jenkins, in plugins, I have already installed the plugin, but essentially if you go to Available Plugins, you will be able to see Inspector Scanner plugin there. Here you can see in my installed plugins, I have the Amazon Inspector Scanner. And going back to one of the pipelines, I just want to show you how I have configured it. So basically, one thing you will have to do, and it's listed on our documentation on Jenkins, et cetera, you will have to, at this time, manually download our Inspector SBOM generator. And in a month or so, it will be also available for automatic download, so that it directly downloads on your Jenkins server without doing anything. Then you can provide your image ID, whatever image you want to scan. It could be from your source code repo or any repo or whatever, like as a part of your build output, or directly from Docker Hub. And then all you have to do is provide the region, AWS region you want to use, and your role. This is how essentially we authenticate. After that, you can provide vulnerability thresholds. So vulnerability threshold is essentially at what point you want the builds to fail. So right now, for example, what I've configured is 5 critical, 5 high, 5 medium, and 10 low, which means is that as long as the vulnerability count is less than that, the build will pass. So let's quickly see how this works. So if I do build now, you'll see the build is complete, and you will be able to see really quickly in the HTML report that what all vulnerabilities were identified. And you can download the SBOM and in CSV format. If I quickly show you what the CSV format looks like, we give you all the details like CVE ID, the description, which package do you need, like which package is installed and which version it is fixed in. Also things like EPSS score, which is becoming very critical these days on how to prioritize your findings. We also provide you if an public exploit is available or not for that CVE. So a lot of the issues are vulnerability intelligence, and also things like, when was the exploit last seen in the wild, since we monitor a lot of the darknet and other areas for our research. So this is how you can quickly do that. And let me update the thresholds to show you how it fails. So let's say if I do critical equal to 0 and just do save, and if I build now, you see the build automatically failed. And you can see build failed because the results will be the same, but essentially because there was one critical, it will automatically fail. So the idea behind it is that your developers can now push security up, and fixing vulnerabilities earlier in the life cycle is always beneficial from a security standpoint and even cost standpoint. There have been numerous studies done on how much it costs to fix your vulnerabilities in CI/CD versus in your repos versus in runtime. So it exponentially grows as we go further in the pipeline. And you can also download SBOM if you want. It will be downloaded in CycloneDX format, and all this is available for you. I didn't have to enable anything. No inspector enablement, nothing. You just, as long as you have your Jenkins server set up or any CI/CD solution, this is all you need to do. Now let's look at the other two features. For that, I will have to log into Inspector. So this is the coverage that we were talking about. As you can see here, now I have 100% coverage, but we give you coverage for all the resources we cover. And if something is not being scanned, why not? We give you actual guidance so that there is some actionability to it so that you can improve your coverage to 100%. Now, we also give you things like risk-based remediations, where we look at your entire environment and looking at which packages are most commonly used, how many CVEs it has, and what is the criticality of those CVEs. And based on that, we prioritize for you essentially what we call top 5 packages on fire. After talking to several security teams, this was one of the major feedback we received. So with this, we kind of tell you this is the package, and it is basically in your we have seen 4 instances where this package has either a CVE on one or the other resource. Here, we did add this panel to make it easy for you to see how it works and which CI/CD plugins we support and how to use our CI/CD integration. Now, to quickly show you how to change your scan mode for EC2 scanning from agent-based to hybrid. So by default, during public preview, it will be agent-based. If a new account is added or you enable Inspector for the first time, it will be configured to agent-based for now, but you can easily go to EC2 scan settings and change it to hybrid. And all you have to do is press save, and that's it. And that your delegated admin can set for your whole organization. Now, after that, we automatically pick up all the instances. So now here, if you go, you can see here which method is being used to monitor these instances. For example, the first 2 are agent-based, the next 2 are agentless, and the last one is agent. And you can click here to see all the findings there are. I'll go through one of the findings really quick to show you what all we provide. We give you brief description of what the CVE is about, if a fix is available for that CVE or not. Then you can see which version is installed on your environment on that specific instance, which epoch, version, release, and architecture, and then which version it is fixed in. So we give you a very direct approach on how to update these things. And then there's other things like EPSS score, CVSS 3.1 score. If a vendor has its own score, so for example, Red Hat provides its own score, Amazon Linux provides its own score. So we provide you up to 5 scores, both CVSS 2 and CVSS 3 scores, vendor provided score, and then we have inspector score on top of it. And there are obviously resource details we provide. Now let's look at the vulnerability intelligence that we provide. Here you can see which MITRE TNT techniques and tactics does this map to. If it has been added to the CISA KEVC, this one wasn't, but which known malwares are being used to exploit the CVE, and what are the evidences that we have seen? So for example, things like we have seen this, 3 sightings on this link where we have seen this has been exploited, or if a pen testing tool has actually tried to exploit the CVE. So we give you a lot of the evidences to help your analysts analyze how to fix a CVE. Now let's look at the other feature that we launched, which was the Lambda scanning feature. Here we give you the coverage details on what we are scanning and what we are not. Let's look at the code vulnerability finding. So this CWE or the vulnerability was detected because we believe insecure cryptographic function was being used. Similar to other things or other findings that are showed, we provide you a lot of the details. What are the vulnerability details? Which file did we identify in? So this is where the vulnerability location is. Like this is the line which we identify as vulnerable. And now with the new launch, you can see how we provide you both the what to remove and what to fix. And you can just download the code patch from here, right here, and your developers can just copy paste the code in source code repositories. So these are mainly the 3 features we have launched, and we have other things like we talked about. For example, vulnerability database search, which I'll quickly show you. This was the log4j. So you can see a lot of the details that we provide, like CVSS score. EPSS score is typically out of 1. So 0.97 is considered to be extremely high. Then also things like, which industries we have seen the CV or hackers targeting these industries, specifically using these CVs. When it was added to CISA, KVC, or their catalog, when was the fixed date? So it kind of shows you the first time it was added to the catalog was 9th of December. The fixed date was 23rd. So for 14 days, there was some gap. So identifying CVs in real time and as close as to publishing or even before is critical. Sometimes we do generate findings for vulnerabilities that don't have a CV ID yet. For those we classify, or our title starts with IN dash. So these are the findings where we identify vulnerabilities where CVs are not published or might never be published. So with this, we'll wrap up our demo and we'll open it up for our Q&A.
So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.